You've also found many bags of information. I think they call them burn bags. They're supposed to be burned, and they didn't get burned, having to do with how corrupt the 2020 election was. And when will that all come out?
Mr. President, I will be the first to brief you once we have that information collected. But you're right, we are finding documents literally tucked away in the back of safes in random offices in these bags and in other areas, which again speaks to the intent of those who are trying to hide the truth from the American people.
That moment from August appears to have foreshadowed what we saw play out this week in Fulton County, Georgia, where the FBI raided an elections office. We'll have the latest reporting on that operations and all the different questions it raises. Also, the ongoing questions surrounding Tulsi Gabbard's role in all of this. Why was the DNI director involved in the execution of a domestic search warrant? Plus, President Trump last night seemed to contradict his own border czar, Tom Homan, who said earlier in the day there are plans to reduce the number of federal officers in Minnesota. What is going on in that state? And we'll bring you the latest from Capitol Hill on a deal to avoid a government shutdown and how soon Congress could get it passed. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, January 30th. Along with Willie and me, we have the co-host of our 9 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, the host of Politics Nation on MS Now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's the president of the National Action Network. And writer at large for the New York Times, Elizabeth Bumiller joins us this morning. And Willie, we start this morning back in Fulton County.
Yeah, we want to know what's going on in Fulton County right now. A list of new questions this morning about that FBI search of a Fulton County election facility. Agents seized hundreds of boxes of materials related to the 2020 presidential election, apparently as part of President Trump's false conspiracy theory that he only lost because the vote was rigged. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in an extraordinarily unusual move seen at the site of the FBI raid. Senate Democrats want to know why she's there. Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Senator Mark Warner of Virginia leading the charge, asking what a domestic FBI investigation has to do with the cabinet member who is tasked with handling international crises.
This is a Director of National Intelligence that is affirmatively moved to cut back the Foreign Malign Influence Center on elections. What the heck is she doing on the FBI serving a domestic warrant? You know, if this doesn't concern the heck out of every American, it sure as hell should. This is a person who's got no business interfering in elections.
This morning, there's new reporting from the Wall Street Journal that details Gabbard's role leading the administration effort to re-examine those 2020 election results. The Journal reports she's been sidelined from traditional DNI duties and did not play any meaningful role in the Venezuela mission. But she has begun studying information about voting machines, whatever that means, analyzed data from swing states, and pursued theories that President Trump has promoted to claim the 2020 election was taken from him. Gabbard regularly has briefed both the president and chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and is expected to prepare a report. President Trump was asked last night about Gabbard's role.
She's working very hard on trying to keep the election safe, and she's done a very good job. And they, as you know, they got into the votes. You got a signed judge's order in Georgia, and you're going to see some interesting things happening. They've been trying to get there for a long time.
We've got the man to talk to on this subject, the chief political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. He's also an MS Now contributor. Greg, when we see your face, we know there's either a close election in Georgia or something strange going on around a close election in Georgia. So here we are back in 2020. Let's just take a step back from your reporting, from the sources that you have on the ground. What exactly is the grounds for this search warrant to begin with, and then we can get into Tulsi Gabbard's role?
Yeah, and you're right. There's two things going on. There's this close election, and it was strange, something strange going on. But the grounds, really, local officials say there are no grounds. This is an election that's done and behind us, right? 6 years ago now. But yet, these false claims of election fraud still persist, and it's been one of the fixations from not just the president, but also his allies to sow doubt and concerns about that 2020 election. And, as shocking and surprising as it was, the timing of the raid on the Fulton County election site, also leaders here have been preparing for that, right? It has been something that the president has hinted at since he recaptured the White House. And so I know I've been getting texts for on and off for months saying it could be today. It could be today when something like this happened. So it was stunning, the scope of it. It was stunning, the timing of it. And I wouldn't say it actually caught some figures, at least here, completely off guard because of the president's hinting that this would happen. As for Tulsi Gabbard, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Keep going. As for Tulsi Gabbard, you were saying?
Yeah, as for Tulsi Gabbard, I was on the scene, minutes after I got a tip that this raid was happening. And, federal officials, as a reporter on the scene, you're just trying to figure out what's happening. And I got a text from a federal official saying Tulsi Gabbard and a senior FBI agent will be on the scene at 6 p.m. And this was maybe 2 or 3 p.m. And I did a double take because, again, why? Why Tulsi Gabbard? It was the immediate question that we had on the ground there of all the people who the Trump administration could have sent. That was not on our bingo card that morning.
Yeah. You pointed out that it was a federal prosecutor in Missouri who was recently appointed by President Trump that signed the warrant for the raid in Fulton County, not the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. His name does not appear on the warrant at all. Is there any significance to that? And what is the reaction? You said some folks were not surprised at all. Were they prepared? What do they think the feds are going for?
Yeah, well, the name on the warrant was the U.S. Attorney from Missouri. So that another confounding thing for local officials here, because the local U.S. Attorney who was appointed by the president, his name was not on there. So some of the reporting that's come out has shown from Bloomberg Law has shown that that attorney, U.S. Attorney from Missouri, has been given sort of special authorization to pursue election integrity cases. That might be one reason. There's other speculation surrounding Dominion, which is the voting machines that Georgia used. That company was bought by a company based in Missouri. So there's local officials, again, are just... Again, some of them weren't surprised that this happened. They were surprised by the timing, but all that has come out since has confounded people, and there's still so many questions just piling up on each other about this investigation.
Greg, we'll remind our viewers that back in November of 2020, the vote in Georgia was counted once, then it was counted again, and then in December of 2020, it was counted a third time. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican who supported President Trump, said, "We want to make sure we got it right. We did. This puts this to rest. Joe Biden won the state of Georgia." So I'm curious this morning, how is Secretary of State Raffensperger? How is Governor Kemp, both of whom rebuked Donald Trump back then, despite the fact they are Republicans who said they supported him generally? How are they responding to what's going on right now?
Yeah, so far they are keeping rather silent. Secretary of State Raffensperger is now running for the Republican nomination to be the governor of Georgia. And so he's locked in a really fierce battle against Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who has Trump's endorsement, and another Republican, Attorney General Chris Carr. So he has to capture some of the MAGA base. So he's been kind of treading lightly around this issue in some sense, while at the same time he's rejected the Trump administration's attempts to get Georgia voting records, saying that he won't hand them over to a third party without certain controls, certain guardrails. As for Governor Kemp, he is in a rather strange position himself as well, because this long feud that we've been talking about, we've been chronicling for the last 6 years or so between him and Donald Trump, it's reached not just tentative truce, it's reached a truce that's actually held for the last year or so. And so I don't think he wants to do anything to upset that truce. So he has been very, very cautious about any sort of criticism or concern that he is publicly displaying towards Donald Trump. I have no indication about his private concerns, but I know in the past he's had many, many private misgivings about where the Trump direction, the Trump narrative has gone.
And Tulsi Gabbard's presence there wholly inappropriate, but in some ways not surprising. She has for many years been sort of conspiracy-minded, and she's fallen out of favor in the Trump White House, and many perceive this is her effort to get back in Trump's good graces. So, Greg, this is obviously about 2020, but many Democrats I've talked to say, well, it's also about 2026. It's also about 2028. You undermine trust in elections, to be sure, but what else are local officials, Georgia officials, Fulton County officials telling you about what their fears are as to what this means for these next couple of elections?
Yeah, you're exactly right. For Trump, it might be about 2020. For local Republicans here, it's about the next two elections, because the fear in Georgia, the fear in Fulton County for Democrats and for voting rights advocates and even some Republicans is that this could be a pretext for a state law that passed after the 2020 election that gives the state the power to intervene in local elections if there is an investigation, if there's some sort of reason to do so. And local officials feel that this is the pretext that Trump allies on the state election board are looking for to take over the Fulton County election. This is Georgia's most populous county. It's also one of the biggest Democratic strongholds in Georgia. So if the state election board, which is a 5-member board, but 3 of them are close Trump allies, is able to take over the Fulton County election system, then advocates here are worried that they could make pretty significant changes that could limit voting rights going into the 2026 midterms and the election thereafter.
All right. Chief political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein, thank you so much. And Elizabeth Buehmiller, there's a lot going on. You know, whether it's Minnesota, an update on the killings there. You had Homan there yesterday, and then the president seemed to be confusing what Homan said he was doing. And the latest post, I think, Lemire, you pointed out to me, was the president pretty much turning on Alex Preddy. And because of the new video that has surfaced that the president, I guess, finally saw of him kicking a taillight.
Yeah, very briefly, just saying he calls Preddy an agitator and perhaps an insurrectionist.
Right.
He goes on to condemn what he did in the first video, clearly, sort of trying to undermine the stories that have been built around Preddy since his death.
So you got a little bit of chaos going on here and there and everywhere, and then this Fulton County story playing out. I'm just wondering, big picture, what stands out to you about what's happening in Fulton County? What questions does it raise in your mind?
Well, I think Jonathan was right. I think it's there's a number of things going on. One is that it certainly creates uncertainty, or they're trying to create uncertainty around the 2026 midterms coming up this fall, and also about 2028. Tulsi Gabbard has had a very rocky first year in the administration. She is out of favor, where she was out of favor. It's almost as if they have given her a job. She was kept out of any kind of planning for Venezuela, which would have been part of her purview. And now now she, according to some officials who've talked to the Times, she is been given the job of looking for foreign influence in a number of states, in a number of states' elections in 2020. That could keep her busy for the rest of this year. But it really is about creating uncertainty, and it's also just about the continuing chaos in this administration as we, careen from one crisis to the next. And right now it seems to be Fulton County and the president turning again on Alex Preddy after being advised to cool it, and is now back to sort of normal Trump behavior and going after him, and also undermining what his new border czar is saying in Minneapolis, who's saying we're going to calm things down, we're going to pull back Trump forces. And of course, he said last night at the Kennedy Center that's not the case. So it's back to just more of the Trump chaos. He's talking about striking Iran. It goes on and on and on. He's still there's negotiations over Greenland, which are not going well. So it's kind of like every week there's a new absolute crisis.